Esther, and then Mary is going to come and read to us from the Gospel of John.
Esther chapter 6. That night the king could not sleep, so he ordered the book of the Chronicles, the record of his reign, to be brought in and read to him. It was found recorded that there Mordecai had exposed Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's officers who guarded the doorway, who had conspired to assassinate King Xerxes. "What honor and recognition has Mordecai received for this?" the king asked. "Nothing has been done for him," his attendants answered. The king said, "Who is in the court?" Now Haman had just entered the outer court of the palace to speak to the king about impaling Mordecai on the pole he had set up for him. His attendants answered, "Haman is standing in the court." "Bring him in," the king ordered. When Haman entered, the king asked him, "What should be done for the man the king delights to honor?" Now Haman thought to himself, "Who is there that the king would rather honor than me?" So he answered the king, "For the man the king delights to honor, let them bring a royal robe to the king. Let them bring a royal robe the king has worn, and a horse the king has ridden, one with a royal crest placed on its head. Then let the robe and horse be entrusted to one of the king's most noble princes. Let them robe the man the king delights to honor, and lead him on the horse through the city streets, proclaiming before him, 'This is what is done for the man the king delights to honor.'" "Go at once," the king commanded Haman. "Get the robe and the horse, and do just as you have suggested for Mordecai the Jew, who sits at the king's gate. Do not neglect anything you have recommended."
It was just before the Passover festival. Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and to go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus replied, "You do not realize now what I am doing, but later you will understand."
Thanks once again for having me here to speak. I appreciate that most of you had no say in the matter, but I still appreciate you letting me be here. And I just want to say, the time when I punched Kane in the face, he was very much asking for it, so that's just so we're clear. As I said earlier, been working with OMF for 10 years, and then 4 years ago, 2019, went back to Japan and moved into Tokyo. I was really, really excited because, as I said, 2020 was going to be the Olympic year, the Olympic Games, Paralympic Games. I had been involved earlier, back in 2018, with we'd done a lot of outreach during the Rugby World Cup, and we had seen the way that sports really opened up doors to go and tell people about Jesus who you normally would not have opportunities to. You know, we had rugby teams coming in from places from New Zealand and Tonga and some other places, and they were getting allowed to go into schools to speak really openly about their faith. and to praise God even in singing and just talk about the Saviour. So we're really excited about what we're going to do. And then, as you know, as I said, at 2020, there was the kind of the pandemic, and then the games got delayed by a year. And that was kind of a mixed feeling, because frustrating, yes, but also, okay, gives us more time to prepare, gives us more time to pray. You spend that year just kind of getting ready and praying and really preparing and making sure we were really ready to go. As we came into 2021, got closer to the beginning of the games, the restrictions just started coming in. So first of all, the government said no overseas visitors. Well, that ruins a lot of our plans, but okay, we can really mobilize the church in Japan. We'll travel around prefectures and do training, and no traveling across prefecture borders unless it's essential. Okay, we do things online. We can still just try and encourage churches to get out, do sports clinics, do public viewings. No public viewings allowed. Okay, well, we can't really do much, but at least we have the chaplains coming, and we have chaplains for the Olympic athletes. Said, okay, you can have three. Actually, you can have one chaplain. Like, okay, and they're not allowed into the athlete village unless it's an emergency. We had no idea what a spiritual emergency looked like for an athlete, and neither did they. And then, anyway, so all of our plans, and with them, all of the hopes and dreams we had for Japan, we wanted to reach 1 million people in Japan with the gospel, and all those plans just came falling down. We felt like we had really prayed into this, and God just seemed to be silent. I don't know what it was like for you during those years, or maybe in previous years, you've ever had times where it feels like God is silent, and you're just kind of left by yourself. Well, for me during COVID, as I was kind of waiting and just wondering what was going on, I got a new hobby. I don't know if anyone else got a kind of a COVID hobby, but this is mine. These are called tenuguri. They have lots of different patterns. I like this one. There's actually this one that Maya designed. Some of them are kind of more nature themed. Some of them are sort of seasonal, different festivals. And I know what you're wondering. Can't really see these patterns you're talking about, Levi. And that's the thing with tenuguri, right? So when you go into a shop, they will be displayed like this, kind of just all on the wall. But as soon as you go into a tenuguri shop, the shopkeeper will say to take one, open it up, because these are designed to be hung on your walls. But unless you open it up, you can't see the full design. The whole point of tenuguri is that in order to really see the big picture, to understand what the picture is about, you have to open it up and step back. And from a distance, well, then you understand what's going on. And so tenuguri, for me, I lived in a little 2-room apartment in the middle of Tokyo, surrounded by just grey and concrete. And tenuguri, kind of, I put them up, I would change them, and it would help decorate my room and make it kind of more bearable as I was doing Zoom meeting after Zoom meeting. But also it helped me to get some perspective, because I realized, I feel a bit like this now, where I'm seeing a little bit of the picture, and I don't know what's going on, but maybe one day I'll see the bigger picture, and I'll realize what God was doing. But see, this is not just an idea I came up with after looking at patterned cloth. This is something that the Bible teaches us as well, because you see, as you might expect, God is mentioned in almost every book of the Bible. Almost. In the book of Esther, there is no mention of God at all. There is no mention of the Lord. God does not get referenced by any of his titles or names. He's just not in the book. What you do have in the book of Esther is this famous passage. You may have thought of it when you heard that was the book for today. At the end of chapter 4, where Mordecai is speaking to Esther, and there's a famous speech that Mordecai says, "Who knows that you have been risen to this position for such a time as this?" And Esther says, "Okay, well, go away and fast and pray for me, and then I will go to the king, even though it's against the law. And if I perish, I perish." So you might think, reading the book, okay, this is a book about a time where God was just silently standing by, and it was up to the Jewish people to be wise and brave and to rescue themselves. But no, in the book of Esther, like every single book of the Bible, God is at work. Sometimes silently he's at work, but he's always there in the background, leading people to do things, and sometimes to not do things. So I'll just take us quickly through the book, and hopefully we can see what I'm talking about. So I'll just kind of run through. If you want to follow along, you can, but just a little overview of the book of Esther. So we start off, we get introduced to this King Xerxes, find out he's not a great king, he's not really a great person. He spends a lot of his time just showing off his wealth. It says verse 4, he for 180 days, so half a year, he just showed off his wealth, his kingdom. He follows it up with a week-long banquet, invites all of his close friends along. At the end of the banquet, he decides he wants to show off his queen. He wants to get his queen, Vashti. She's beautiful, he's going to parade her in front of everyone to show off how beautiful she is. He says to her, come along, I want to show you to my friends, and she says, no. And the king is so angry, he talks to his experts, and they decide that the only reasonable response is to make it illegal for the queen to come into the king's presence. The queen can never come before the king. Their reasoning is that if they don't do this, then women all around the empire will start disrespecting their husbands. So, but this is their plan. They do this. Later on, then, the start of chapter 2, the king calms down and then realizes he's now made it illegal for his wife to come in and see him. So again, he goes back to his counselors, and they say, okay, well, what we should do now, you're the king you have this massive empire, just bring in beautiful women from all around the empire, and you can decide the one you want to be your queen. So that's what they do, and that's where we meet Esther. We discover that her parents had died when she was younger, so she's been raised by her uncle Mordecai. She gets chosen to be one of these candidates for the queen. The king is impressed by her, and she gets made into the new queen. And then if you get towards the end of chapter 2, I'll just read this bit for us. So, the end of chapter 22, verse 21. During the time Mordecai was sitting at the king's gate, Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's officers who guarded the doorway, became angry and conspired to assassinate King Xerxes. But Mordecai found out about the plot and told Queen Esther, who in turn reported it to the king, giving credit to Mordecai. And when the report was investigated and found to be true, the two officials were impaled on poles. All this was recorded in the book of the annals in the presence of the king. But let's just take a moment here to recognize two things. One, this was quite a brave move at this point by Mordecai and Esther. They heard about a plot to assassinate the king, and they kind of make sure that the king knows about this. But they can't really know how deep the plot goes, who's involved. Maybe they tried to stop it, and the people who are trying to plot the king kind of just get rid of them, get them out of the way. Maybe they tell the king and he doesn't believe them. Maybe they tell the king and he tries to stop it and it doesn't work. And either way, it's a risky move for Esther and Mordecai. And it must have also been, emotionally conflicted, I think, because as we've seen, King Xerxes is not a great king. He's just basically taken Esther and made her his wife. This could be freedom for Esther. All Mordecai has to do is be quiet, do nothing. And yet he must have felt this is the right thing to do. And I don't know if any of you have ever had that kind of thing where you've done something, you thought this was the right thing to do, you took a risk, you did something which actually felt against your best interest, but it was the right thing to do, and nothing happened. Felt like God was just not really paying attention to you there. And that's kind of what happened, but actually even worse than that, when we get to chapter 3, we see not only does nothing done for Mordecai, but it gets worse and worse. Because this guy Haman is made kind of second in command, and then he really dislikes the way that Mordecai does not respect him how he wants. So he then comes up with his reasonable response is, not only am I going to get rid of Mordecai and have him killed, but actually I'm going to destroy the entire Jewish people. Finds out that Mordecai is a Jew, so I'm going to destroy the entire Jewish people, and he starts this plot. And then that's when we get to this point at the end of chapter 4, where Mordecai finds out about this, and he tells Esther, and they decide, well, Esther, you need to go and tell the king, speak up for the people. And then Esther chapter 5, she organizes a banquet, just brings along the king and Haman. So Haman then is really excited, thinks, dude, the king loves me, the queen loves me. He's really kind of pumped. Goes home, on his way he sees Mordecai, and he remembers, I hate Mordecai so much. And he goes, speaks to his wife, and she's like, dude, just get him killed. Just go in the morning, and then go to the king, get Mordecai impaled on a pole, and then you can go and enjoy the banquet. And then we get to this bit we had read, chapter 6. I'll just read it again for us at the beginning. That night the king could not sleep, so he ordered the book of the chronicles of the record of his reign to be brought in and read to him. King not being able to sleep is kind of normal. We heard from Kenny that in those situations he would be up praising God, singing that song. King Xerxes, a man who has the entire empire for him, a man we know likes to party, to drink, he decides for some reason to have his history books read to him. And as he does, he finds out about that part when Mordecai had stopped this assassination plot. And he says, what honor and recognition has Mordecai received for this? Nothing has been done for him. His attention answered. And then just at that point is when Haman comes in. And it becomes this kind of comedy because Haman comes in, he goes before the king. The king says to him, verse 6, what should be done for the man the king delights to honor? And Haman, proud man that he is, he's like, he's got to be talking about me. This is amazing. Day's getting better and better. So he rolls off this list of things. So get a horse the king has ridden, get a man on it, give him a robe, have a person parading through the streets saying this is what the king does for the man who honors him. And verse 10, the king says, go at once, get the robe and the horse and do just as you have suggested for Mordecai the Jew who sits at the king's gate. Do not neglect anything you have recommended. So Haman then has to go, and to the man who he hates more, the man who he's wants to be impaled on a pole, he has them parading through the streets, praising him. And he goes home and everyone's like, you're ruined, this is it. But do you see how this whole turns on this point back at the end of chapter 2, when it felt like God was just being silent? And maybe God wasn't paying attention and was ignoring things. But actually, at exactly the right timing, God worked, moving the king so he couldn't sleep, having the history brought to him, hearing about this time when Mordecai's work was overlooked, just at the time that Haman is coming in, all big and ready to have Mordecai killed, and it all just comes together. Haman's plot is ruined, Mordecai is honoured, Esther and the Jewish people are saved. The story goes on, and we hear that actually after this, a lot of people all around the empire came to fear and trust the Lord God. Or it says they became Jews, but that's what's going on, is God has been quiet in the background. So Esther was brave, yes, and Mordecai was wise, absolutely. And I think they are really good examples to us of what it means to be a faithful follower of God. But they're not the heroes of the story. God, who is silent, is the hero and the author of the story, and of all the stories. But I know what you're wondering at this point. You've probably got a couple of questions. One thing you're thinking is, okay, but this was Esther, this was before Christ, this was in a whole different setting, this empire, and we're not in that situation now. So what are we meant to be doing as followers of Jesus now? And the other thing that some of you, I'm sure, are thinking is, do tenebrae appear in the Bible? And luckily for you, the answer is found in that passage we read earlier. So if you want to flip with me to John chapter 13. And so we go back, this is now Jesus with his disciples. And if I go to verse 4, it says, Jesus got up from his meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. In the Japanese translation of the Bible, it says it's a tenebrae. So he took it. So these things, they are kind of beautiful cloths, but originally they were just towels. They were just used to, you tie them on your head to get the sweat off your eyes, or you could use them to dry things, or even to wash feet. We have another story here where Jesus is washing his disciples' feet, and he was saying that this is a model for you to copy. So you could look at this. I mean, he even says to Peter, verse 7, you do not realize now what I'm doing, but later you will realize. Peter didn't realize, the disciples didn't realize. And I think when we look at this, we could think, okay, so this is like just a picture of what it means to be a Christian. Christians are people who do serve one another and love one another. That's our mission. And that's true, that's a thing we are called to do. But actually this again, like the book of Esther, is a bigger picture here. And we see that hinted at the very beginning of chapter 13. It says, Jesus, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. This is a kind of a picture of what it looks like to love one another, but actually this is a picture of Jesus saying he's going to be a servant who's going to love those who follow him. He's going to love them to the end. The story goes on, I'm sure you know, and Jesus after this will speak more, but then he'll be betrayed, he'll be arrested, he'll go to the cross. He'll allow himself to be crucified, to take on himself the sins of the world, because he's loving those who follow him to the end. And then after that he will be buried or put in a tomb. He'll come out of the tomb. Sorry for spoilers for Easter, I know we're not there yet, but Jesus, he rises from the graves, he goes up to the Father's right hand, and even now he says, Bible says he's praying for us, he's interceding for us, he's loving us to the end. So even as we now serve one another, love one another, we remember that Jesus is loving us. I'm going to show you a little video clip just of some of one of the ministries we do in Tokyo. I don't know Avi more that well. Mary said we arrived yesterday. We don't know the context, so I can't tell you what it will look like for you to work this out here. But I can show you just a 2-minute clip of what we do in Japan to. Maybe we can get it real for you. That's good.
This town, this place, Minami, is so special to me. This is where I grew up. The concept of Friday Terrace is to love your neighbor as yourself. And I wanted this place to be like a bridge where my friends, my neighbors, and more Christians get to know each other and build a relationship. So about the time when I started, God was already also providing me a wonderful helper and a supporter, and his name is Levi.
My name's Levi, I'm a missionary, and I'm from the UK. Yeah, so here's how to explain it. Every Friday, this place, it's called Friday Terrace, and it's really sort of like an open space in the community, like a random kids' corner of games. I'm bringing some like manual for people to read. Often we create some people with their keyboard or guitars, people just hang around. Like, often kids kind of gather in the middle, we have to kind of throw up and down the beanbag, or we go to the park just a way to just play with the kids. And through that kind of give people the opportunity to just naturally interact with Christians, as myself and my other missionary friends who have come along to help out, and give those kind of create that space for those conversations to happen.
When we started Friday Terrace, a lot of missionaries came here to help, and it just changes the atmosphere of this place. Sometimes Japanese people open up their heart more towards missionaries from America, UK, different countries.
There you go. The full video of that is on, you can get it on the QR code. A friend of ours called Tim, who loves doing videos and stuff, he put a lot of work into making that. But that's just, hopefully gives you a little idea. For us in Turkey, what we do, we just want to, as we say here, create community that communicates Christ. We're loving one another, invite people into that community, letting them see what it looks like for us to love Jesus. But actually, all the things we're doing, we have to keep pointing people back to Him. That Jesus is the one who keeps on loving us to the end. So just to finish, go to the next slide. So I just share this story and then we'll pray and we'll worship Jesus. But this is just next to that Friday Terrace place you saw. This is a grapevine, and actually before Mike and I got married, we got married in the last summer, and before we went, they had this vine here. And it's outside the house, and they were gonna, when they were redoing the house a while ago, making it into that lounge, they wanted to tear away the vine because it was this dead vine. My dad was like, I know it's dead, but it looks kind of cool, so let's just leave it there. And then, but after we got married, we went a little bit outside of Tokyo, had the wedding, stayed away for a few days, came back, and then this team who had come from America to help us run the wedding and things, and they came to stay with us for a few days. So before they flew out, we did a little kind of Sunday worship gathering on the Sunday morning. And the day or so before, we had gone outside and discovered that this vine, which we thought was dead, had produced grapes. And as you see, like these very big grapes. One thing you should know about Japan is the fruit is incredible. It's all huge, and these grapes are massive grapes. And when we decided, okay, we'll kind of enjoy these grapes as a kind of a final thing together before the team fly out. And it turned out that there was exactly the number of grapes as there were people who were gathered for our little kind of house church morning. Now, I'm a very cynical person at heart, but even for me, I found it hard to see that and to not just think of Jesus' words. He will say later on in John, abide in me. I am the grape, you are the vine, you are the branches. Abide in me, and you will bear fruit. And later on, he will say, abide in my love. So for us and for Hope Avimore, in all of the things we do for God, and there may be times where either as a church or as individuals, you have to kind of echo those words of Esther. You have to say, okay, we will go, we will take a stand for Jesus. We will speak of the King Jesus, or we will live for him. And if I lose my job, I lose my job. If I'm disowned, I'm disowned. If we're kicked out, we're kicked out. Maybe some of you, God is going to call to places where you do have to say, okay, I will go, and if I perish, I perish. But in all of that, we have to remember that actually it is Jesus who is loving us to the end. He is the one working. The times when it feels like he is being silent and leaving us, and we're praying and praying and praying, and there's no